Welcome to Missing the Mark, where we look for meaning in strange places. I'm Christopher. I'd like to just give a few quick thoughts on the ashes of Ash Wednesday. Two, actually. The second one is about the fact that in America we do this on the forehead, which is nearly the only place in the world where Catholics put ashes on the forehead. Most of the rest of the world sprinkles ashes onto the head. So I want to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about that second. The first thing I want to talk about is what's said with the application of the ashes, which is, remember you are dust, and to dust you will return. This comes under the general category of what has been called the memento mori. You can see paintings and stuff like of a writer with a skull on his desk, called the memento mori, a remembrance of death, a reminder of death. And for some reason we tend to, ironically enough, this sort of thing often gets called morbid, which just means pertaining to death. From the mort and so on, like in the French, meaning death. And so I've never entirely understood this, frankly. Death actually is in many ways a very liberating thing. Contemplating death is a very liberating thing. It's not a gloomy thing, and it's liberating precisely because it shows that we do not fit into this world. That is to say, if we really fit into this world, we shouldn't die within it. It should all work and everything should be fine. But clearly, obviously, this world does not work perfectly. I mean, it works to a great degree, but it does not work perfectly. It's not right. And so much of our troubles and sorrows and difficulties and stresses in life is trying to fit into this world to which we do not really fit in, trying to actually match it perfectly when we don't and we can't match it perfectly. And so remembering death actually is very liberating precisely because it allows one to stop worrying about the fact that we don't fit in. We don't. We just accept that and move on. We do the best we can in this fallen world. And that's okay, because we don't really fit into it. So I don't mean, we're going to die, so don't worry because it'll all come out the same. Or, things actually do matter, very much so. But they matter, it is precisely the fact that they are not everything, which is why they do in fact matter. Because if this is all there is, then so what? Precisely because it doesn't work. You'll never win. You will never ever accomplish true goodness in this world. Complete goodness, unalloyed with anything else. It will never work. And so there's no point in attempting to do the impossible. I mean, I understand the glory of the whole, we will attempt to do the good even though we shall fail. Like, Don Quixote, which is very stirring precisely because there is another world to which he appeals. And he is trying to bring as much of that other world, that better world, to this one as possible. If this is the only world, there is nothing else to which you can appeal. And, pain and sorrow and misery and death and lying and cheating and so on are all just as much a part of this world and just as properly a part of this world if this world is not broken. And if this world is all that there is, it can't, by definition, be broken. There is nothing to, there's no greater ideal to which it could, fail to measure up. And so in that sense, death is liberating, and contemplating death is liberating precisely because there is a better world than this one. And we can live in this one attempting to bring that better world, or attempting to make it conform to that better world than this one as much as we can to the utmost of our strength. And it's okay that it doesn't work because it's not supposed to work. It's supposed to work in the sense it was supposed to be perfect, but it's not going to work, and that's okay because it's not going to last forever. It has a chance of actually being perfected. So death in that sense is actually quite liberating, precisely because it gives this world not lasting forever, gives the hope of a new world, a better world. So, there's that in which I think, attempting to forget the fact that we die leads only to misery because this world clearly doesn't really work. So about the ashes on the forehead, there's something very curious about this, especially because the readings today are... I'm Catholic, by the way, in case any viewers aren't aware of that. And so I'm talking about Catholic, stuff from the Catholic perspective and so on. I'm not saying anything positive or negative about, anything, any other traditions or other Christians and so on. But within the Catholic Church, there's apparently one other place, or maybe two other places, but America is nearly the only place that puts ashes on the forehead. And it's actually rather strange because in the gospel reading today, there's the part where Jesus explicitly says, and when you are fasting, don't, the hypocrites will stop taking care of themselves and they will look gaunt and haggard so that everybody knows that they're fasting. When you fast, go and wash your face and look normal so that no one will know that you're fasting. And so here on a day of fasting and abstinence from meat and penance, we get marked with something that very loudly proclaims that we're observing today. It doesn't guarantee that you're fasting, of course, so it's not like literally, but, in the same way, within, Israeli culture, the culture of Jesus at the time, that's what I mean. A gaunt expression only made it extremely likely. So, everyone knows. And so why is this? Why is it, as opposed to something vastly more discreet, which is, frankly, more obviously in keeping with this. And I don't know the actual explanation. I don't know the origin. I've talked to some people who, I've talked to some priests who also don't know the origin. Someday I'll actually look it up, and when I find out, I'll tell you guys. But I do have an interesting idea, which is, a perspective on how to look at it, rather than a description of where it came from. So it doesn't really matter where it came from because this perspective is still a valid one, even if this is not the motivating perspective. And that is, roughly speaking, that that this indication of penance is an indication that one needs to do penance. It is marking us out as sinners. So if you see somebody with ashes on their forehead, one thing that you know is this person is a sinner, like me. And so, and especially if you're used to Christian culture, you might think like, well, we're all sinners. Everyone knows this. We're all sinners. It's an expression you hear all the time. But, if you have any experience of secular culture, you will find out, in fact, a lot of people do not think of themselves as sinners. This is at most an excuse that occasionally comes up if somebody does something wrong, which they then immediately try to forget. But no, actually, if you have an experience of a broader culture, but secular as well as Christians who aren't saints, you will find actually there are a lot of people who do not think of themselves as sinners. You will find, in fact, a lot of people who will say to me, utterly mystifying words, "I'm a good person." To which I can kind of only reply, good for you. I'm not. Until next time, may you hit everything you aim at.